Hello and welcome to this segment of MythoLogical presented by Breakfast at Cinema, in which we will take a look at some of Hindi cinema's many attempts to bring to the big screen stories we have grown up listening to and those we go back to time and again throughout our lives. Mythology has always influenced cinema deeply with the various plot templates it provides, the fact that these stories are already popular with the masses, and the scope for presenting grandeur and divinity while exploring new filmmaking technologies. For this event, we are focusing on mythology in Hindi cinema with four trend defining films that showcase their role and legacy. Let's talk about how cinema strengthens mythology. It was the 1970s. Male audiences were being served up a macho new template to look up to and emulate. A departure from an idealistic hero who worked for the benefit of not just himself but the whole community around him, to that of a hero traumatized by his past and the injustices being heaped upon him and his family by the system that has become corrupt, who decides to fight the ugly fight and bring himself justice. The angry young man was personified by Amitabh Bachchan in Zanjeer, but the women of this country were still trying to figure out their role in nation building. Their dominion till now was limited to their own households, but they were starting to look for role models and shake things up for themselves. Jai Santoshi Ma, the story of a woman bound by traditions, motivated by devotion, and the strength of a belief in good deeds and fulfillment of duties, released in 1975, the year that gave us iconic movies and marked a grand milestone in Hindi cinema history. The Sholay justice model, along with films like Diwar, Dharmatma, and Mere Apne, were all about snatching well deserved rights from the clutches of a corrupt system by hook or by crook. The hero in these stories had two concerns: either to fall in love and marry a woman of his choice, or to fight every injustice around him and perish in the process while the rest of the family floats out of danger and enters a safe space. With both these templates defining the men, the women were reduced to ornamental props where either they worked with the hero for the fulfillment of his goals or fought against him because she was with the villain. There were almost always the supporting figures but hardly ever protagonists or change agents. Santoshi Mata, or the goddess of satisfaction, first began to be popularized in 1960s North India through Vrat Katha literature and posters. She seems to have been a local site deity in a temple in Jodhpur, Rajasthan, actually dedicated to Lal Sagar ki Mata, or the goddess who presided over the local lake called Lal Sagar. Said to be appeased even with humble offerings of gur chana rather than expensive sweets, fruits, silks, and jewelry, she began to appeal to the poor as well, who couldn't afford expensive offerings, bolstering the credo of the Bhakti movement, which shunned rituals, instead favoring true heartfelt devotion as the only offering to God. Scholars of film and religion worldwide have studied this film for the kind of hyperculture it created almost pan-India in instantly boosting Santoshi Ma as an established goddess in the Hindu pantheon. In fact, it was director Vijay Sharma's wife who encouraged him to make this film and spread her message. Jai Santoshi Ma, heavily inspired by the Vrat Katha literature, is about her follower Satyavati who falls in love and marries another follower of hers, Birju. Birju, a musician at heart, is the youngest in a family of 7 brothers and their wives and is constantly told to stand on his 2 feet. After a particularly terrible fight with his sisters-in-law, he leaves home to find dignity, employment, and success. After the news of his death reaches his family, the older women all begin to harass and humiliate Satyavati, who tolerates all of it with faith that her Santoshi Ma will take care of her. She constantly finds herself in danger, only to be rescued by some women or the other. One day, Birju comes back, successful and rich, but outraged by the treatment meted out to his wife in his absence, builds a palatial home only for the two of them. After some more conspiring and hell-raising by the sisters-in-law, the film ends by bringing the family together happily. The original Vrat Katha had nameless characters and also no mention of the origins of Santoshi Ma or the politics of the divine female trinity, Parvati, Lakshmi and Saraswati against Santoshi Ma. The film very cleverly uses the last to draw parallels between Satyavati's trials and tribulations to prove herself worthy of acceptance by her in-laws, just like Parvati, Lakshmi and Saraswati test Satyavati's devotion towards Santoshi Ma before they accept her into their pantheon. In fact, the scenes involving Parvati, Lakshmi, Saraswati and Narad show the goddesses talking in a manner that most women would have identified with, complaining about the fact that they hardly ever get the time to meet each other, complaining about their husbands, indulging in power play. It seems funny to us today, but imagine the glee of the thousands of women whose worlds were within four walls of their homes, and when they were shown that the goddesses they revered also led similar hassled lives. Then, depicting Santoshi as a child, a woman, and in her various avatars as she protects and rescues Satyavati every time, covers a woman's entire life cycle. Moreover, in the various scenes where the camera works in the manner of a darshan, having the deity and the devotee look at each other, an illusion of sameness is created, telling all women watching the movie, each of you is Santoshi Ma. The film also helps viewers establish a relationship between Santoshi Ma with the other gods. She is known to be Ganesha's daughter, who was created because their sons, Shubh and Labh, wanted a sister to tie them a Rakhi on Raksha Bandhan. While Ganesha's marital status is considered differently across India, it took no time for Santoshi's existence to be established. After all, gods exist only if we believe in them. Many scholars see the continuing popularity of Santoshi Ma as the extension of the Ganpatya tradition or the cult of Ganesha. Satyavati's plight is miserable. Everything in her world is antagonistic towards her. She is vulnerable. A beautiful woman eyed by goons, teased and harassed by her sisters-in-law because she is duty-bound to respect them. A husband who is neither loved nor respected in his own home despite his sweet nature, and who has to leave her behind to prove his worth, and a loving father who wants to help but is far away. The world is as rotten for her as it is for the angry young man, but rather than use rage to battle the injustices piled against her, she falls back on quality of devotion, compassion, and deliverance through the many tests of her faith in her beloved goddess, qualities which are traditionally ascribed to the feminine gender, especially in the Indian context. However, while Satyavati never stands up to her bullies, she is also shown to have an assertive temperament. She presented women with new aspirations. Marry a man of your choice, someone you love and respect. Travel independently with your husband as opposed to the whole family traveling together, which was the norm then. Have finances and properties separate from the larger family. These were no longer ideas to be ashamed of because Santoshi Ma herself blessed and took care of a devotee who did all these things. Again, what she offered during her puja was not as important as the intensity of her belief that she would be blessed with safety, happiness and satisfaction if she stayed kind, honest and dutiful. As was common practice in those days, films used to run their credits or at least the title in Hindi, English and Urdu. However, the makers of the film were very conscious of their target audience. So the credits in this film are only in Hindi, which run on a screen where the goddess's puja and arati is happening as the credits appear and a virtual darshan of the goddess is accorded to the viewers. Women across the country, when they finally found representation on screen, gave a phenomenal reception to the movie and its titular goddess. We have heard stories from family and friends that people used to leave their footwear outside the cinema halls, throw money and flowers whenever Santoshi Ma appeared on screen, and sing along the devotional songs enthusiastically. We know from a friend that all the women in his village, with the help of a young male relative, went on a bullock cart to the closest theatre to watch the movie. When they came back home, they were instructed by their father-in-law to bathe before entering the house to leave behind the corrupt influence of cinema. However, the instructions were revoked when he was told that they had gone to watch Jai Santoshi Ma. Another friend's grandfather owned a theatre in Pune which was making terrible losses because none of the films screened in the previous many years could attract audiences. Then Jai Santoshi Ma descended from the heavens and she continued to be in the theatre for so long that with this single film, he recovered all his previous losses and his bank balance came out of the red zone. Many people still observe a fast on Fridays, avoiding sour or bitter food as an act of devotion towards Santoshi Mata. The themes of a troubled woman holding on to her values and continuing to be a change agent with the support of divine intervention became a theme that most women in a still developing country found worth idealizing. Jai Santoshi Ma told these very women they didn't have to be tough as men or exploit their authority to be happy. It gave them courage to balance tradition and modernity. It still puzzles people to know that in a year of massive blockbusters like Sholay and Diwar, Jai Santoshi Ma was a top 3 movie and a top 10 movie of the 1970s. That is the magic of this iconic film.